Hi everybody, Kat here. Welcome to the channel. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are. Well, today we're going to be talking about the Earl Charles Spencer, Diana's brother, and specifically about a regret he'll take to his grave. Here we go. Well, we're going to go back in time to 1996, right after Diana's divorce was final. The headspace she was in, she was looking to revamp herself professionally, which we saw her do, keeping up with her humanitarian work outside of the royal circle, her trips to Bosnia and all the landmine stuff, the Red Cross visits, these kinds of, she was carving a new path for herself using all the skills that she had garnered during her time as a professional royal, I guess you could say. And in her private life, of course, we know she was hoping to make some big changes. Now, at the time, and this is something that had been kept quiet, even though earlier years we'd heard all about her affairs. At this time, she was dating the heart surgeon Hasnat Khan. She was dating him in secret. He would stay at Kensington Palace. Sometimes she would stay at his apartment. They dated in total for 2 years, only ending up breaking up just weeks before her death. She wanted to take it public and he did not, and that was basically the gist of it. But anyway, at the time around 1996, Diana did have a lot of conflicts still going on. She was still besieged by the paparazzi, in some ways worse than before, because of course she had gotten rid of her palace security. She no longer had as many advisors around her. Of course, she had her private secretary, and she had Ken more of her private security, stuff like that. But she really, and she had her circle of private, personal friends, but her circle of friends were out of the circle of the whole kind of royal establishment game that was really trying to run the narrative around Diana at the time, Charles's camp, the establishment. So she was in a position, and I mean, William, we've heard so much about how, Diana would be crying on the bathroom floor and he'd be pushing tissues under the door to her, and he as a young teen took on the role of confidant and advisor to his mother. And I mean, this is very distressing, and everywhere they went and everything they did, it was just a media circus. So at this time, Diana was looking for a place that would be private, that she could take the children, that she could spend some time away from Kensington Palace, away from the circus of it all. You see, Diana didn't own anything. Kensington Palace was Charles and Diana's home in London. And when they separated and with the divorce, she was allowed to keep the apartments. Charles had Highgrove, not to mention other homes, and they had access to Sandringham and Balmoral and all the private estates where they would go in summer, the royal family and stuff like that. So like, Diana's concern was with the boys, like she didn't have a place that she could take them for a holiday, that they could be private and away from the crowds and, out in the country or whatever, just private, to enjoy some time, which the boys did have with their father. she had nowhere to take him, so she spoke to her brother, Charles, the Earl Spencer, who ran that vast Spencer estate now that Diana and him and the rest of them had grown up on. Their family home. Now, on the estate of Althorpe, there are several smaller homes, and by that, maybe 3, 4, 5 bedroom homes that we would consider, quite fabulous, really. But they, so anyway, Diane had asked her brother if she could have one of the houses on the estate so that she'd have a place to come, private place in the country, whatever. She'd have a place to bring the boys. She was specifically thinking about, summer holidays. Her and Charles had a really good arrangement for joint custody and time with the kids, and she was never refused time with the kids. But you see, she had nowhere to take them in the summer for holidays or anything, or winter, anything like that. She pretty much had to rely on the generosity of friends to provide her with private transportation, to provide her with a place to stay, a place to bring the kids. She didn't own anything, and Charles, if you listen to now what Diana wrote about it, what Diana spoke about this request, was that Charles just refused her and said, no, I don't want you here. I don't want the publicity. I don't want the press. I don't want the paparazzi outside the door. I don't want to have to engage in extra security and all of the things. And he said no to her. Now, in a recent article, in a recent interview that the Earl Spencer has given regarding all kinds of things, and this was one thing he mentioned. And now what he says about the whole thing is that there were several homes on the estate that she could have had. Originally, when she asked him, he thought it was a brilliant idea, he says. But the problem came that the home that Diana had her heart set on was only, something like 500 meters from the road. And so it was a non-starter as far as he was concerned, too close in proximity to the public and people and paparazzi and the whole thing and the security and everything. So he turned her down. So she says that he turned her down flat. He now, almost 28 years later, puts a rider on it saying, well, she could have had one of the other homes, but no. So I just said no. Seems to me there could have been a little bit more negotiation happen and satisfy her request somehow. But we'll never know, will we? We'll never know. But yeah, he says now that is one of his biggest regrets, because had she had a place to bring the children, she wouldn't have had to rely that summer on the Alfayeds and their yacht holiday and the whole thing to take the kids. And maybe history would have been different. Quite possibly. But now, Earl Spencer, I don't know. I'm sure you do regret it. I'm sure you do. Hindsight's always 20/20. But at the time, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. It's a shame. And now he's still talking about it. you know. But it is interesting because at her funeral, he gave that speech, you know, and saying that we, your blood family, speaking to the boys, that, you know, we want your hearts to sing, or whatever, the, you know, it was quite a moving thing that the crowds outside and up through the Abbey, the swell of approval in the form of applause, which you never hear at a funeral, was overwhelming. He hit a chord with everybody. And, you know, over the years, you've kind of heard, well, oh, Earl Spencer, yeah, he said that, but what's he ever done for William and Harry since then? And we've never seen them together. And, well, come to find out now, all these years later, it kind of perked up again, and people started talking when the other day Harry was in London for the service at St. Paul's for Invictus, and who, you know, there wasn't a royal to be found there, but the Earl Spencer was there, as well as one of Diana's sister, Lady Jane Fellows. There was cousins there as well from the Spencer side. So Diana's family, Harry's extended family, was there in support of him. And, you know, in the press, people were saying, well, is this, you know, yeah, he invited him. It's a ploy to put another, you know, snub back to the royal family. It's like a back and forth thing. And yeah, I'm sure there's probably a little bit of that going on, that, you know, it's just an accidental plus on Harry's side, that, yeah, this looks like, wow, you won't come. You know, the royal family, you guys won't come, but my mother's family is here. You know, but part of it too, though, through the years, there have been relations with Diana's family as far as the boys are, not just Harry, but William as well. They've had them for holidays. They've seen them. They've gotten quite close. But that was all kept private for a couple of reasons. One, I think everybody involved wanted it to be kept quiet. So there was some privacy. There was some, you know, there for the boys and for Diana's wider family. And also, it was in the best interest of the palace to keep these kind of visits, and the boys saying that, you know, it was an advantage to the palace to keep the relationship between the boys and the Spencer family quiet, because even right from the beginning, royal reporters have said it, you know, it wasn't really spoken out loud, and it wasn't that the boys were discouraged to, encouraged to, you know, put their mother out. She's gone, done, put it away, in their unfeeling sort of compartmentalizing way. Royal reporters have said that was kind of the attitude after she died, that the boys were kind of encouraged to just get on with it. And you know, this, of course, I'm sure has led in a large part to a lot of Harry's mental problems, this kind of behavior, you know, just, nope, you're not going to talk about it, don't think about it, carry on, move on. So, yeah. So the boys have had relationships with the Spencers through the years. And, but you wonder how long it's going to last when things like this come out. When things like this come out, that their uncle refused Diana a safe haven because he was more concerned about his own stuff. So it's kind of a two-edged sword. He's a complicated individual. He's written a book and come out and talked about a lot of things and abuse in his childhood, and I don't think it was to try to play the victim. I don't think it was to get attention. That book had nothing really to, well, it of course was his childhood and his childhood with Diana and how they grew up, and it was really, it wasn't ideal. They had a lot of money, but their mother basically walked out on them. They did see her. I mean, contrary to a lot of reports that she just kind of left, they saw her every weekend. They had a shared custody visitation agreement. It's not like she never saw them again. But, in aristocratic families, that's the way that kind of stuff goes a lot of the time. But, yeah. We know that the Earl Spencer probably has more than that regret. I mean, he is saying now that this is his biggest regret, that he didn't allow her to stay on the estate. I would say he should have more regrets than that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not really bashing the Earl Spencer as some would do. The whole Panorama interview mess with Martin Bashir. Martin Bashir lied to Earl Spencer to get him to confront Diana with all this false evidence and convince her that things were a lot worse than they were, and, really gaslight her, and he got the interview. I mean, it was, and nothing's happened to that man. The Earl Spencer was smart enough at the time to keep all the documentations and notes of the meetings and copies of everything, so that now, I mean, as of a few years ago, I mean, he went to the BBC. He was deceived in order to get to Diana. And when you wonder about these kind of things, like a big operation like that, you use the BBC, big money power corporation. There were people inside that knew exactly what was going on, but nobody's been prosecuted. Nobody's been prosecuted. A princess died, but nobody's been prosecuted. I'm not saying the BBC killed her, not at all, but I'm saying the gaslighting, the increasing her paranoia, filling her with fear, the interview and the backlash from it all, and her behavior, it was certainly, as sure as we can say today, that Harry and Meghan's behavior towards the Queen and Prince Philip probably contributed to their death, in the fact of just all the extra stress while they were ill anyway. Same thing, all the extra stress on Diana when she was mentally tortured already. To add to that, she was just trying to jump from one thing to another over hot coals and try to maintain and rebuild her life, and she was terrified of everything. So, coming up again around that time in the summer and what could have been, yeah, I bet Charles the Earl Spencer has some regrets. I bet he does. And that's just a little bit of history for you to maybe help you understand what was going on at the time. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, leave me a comment. I'd love to know what you're thinking about all of this. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.